We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I'll give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah. My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor's toxic taxes have been rushed through the parliament. As a result, thousands of Australian women, including widows, divorcees and victims of family and domestic violence, will pay more tax. Can the Prime Minister give Australians a straight answer? How much more tax will widows, divorcees and victims of family and domestic violence pay because of the Treasurer's bungled budget?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The answer is they won't. And we've made that very clear, Mr Speaker. No wonder they're struggling over there, Mr Speaker. We had a shadow minister earlier today speak about abandoning the Liberal Party name. She said this: "I think it's time for the Liberal Party to rebrand itself."
Order. Members on my right. Order. We'll hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Speaker, it goes to relevance. Now, the Prime Minister might have addressed in part some of the question, but it doesn't then give him licence to then go and talk about anything else that he wants to. He has to stay on the policy subject matter and relevance. And what he was talking about has nothing to do with his failure.
Order. It's not the way to raise the point of order with extra commentary along the line. The Prime Minister was reading a quote about the opposition. He wasn't asked about the opposition. He did answer the question that he was asked very early in his answer. He was asked how much, and he's answered that part. Right? I think we can all agree on that. Just need to make sure if he's reading any quotes out, he makes it directly relevant to what he was asked about. He wasn't asked about opposition policy. He was asked about government policy. But he can compare and contrast. We've just got to make sure he's being directly relevant, and I'll listen carefully to his answer.
Mr Speaker, I am comparing and contrasting a government that's determined to make a difference to people, that's introduced tax reform, something that was called for a long period of time, by people inside and outside of this parliament, and it stands in stark contrast with the character reference given by his own shadow minister. He said this: "Some people think that we're stuck in the past and our policies need to resonate with Australia of today and the future. So I think it would be a really good time for us to revisit our values, what we stand for and the way we project ourselves." She went on to say, "We need to get some experts in. I just was inspired by Sky News."
That's the problem.
Order. The Treasurer.
That's not the solution.
The Minister for Social Services. Order.
Mr Speaker,
member for
we have a Liberal Party that isn't Liberal, a National Party that isn't national, and a One Nation Party that wants to divide the nation.
We'll move to the next question. Give the call to the Chief Government Whip.
I thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government building relationships that help deliver a safe, peaceful and prosperous Pacific and support regional and national security?
Call to the Minister for Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
I thank the member for her question and her advocacy for the Pacific. Speaker, Australia turns up in the Pacific. We listen and we act on Pacific priorities. As the PM said, as a proud member of the Pacific family, we support the collective security and prosperity of the entire region. We do this because our security and prosperity depends upon a safe and stable region. And, Speaker, today marks an important moment in our relationship with Vanuatu. NACAMAL is Australia's first comprehensive bilateral agreement with Vanuatu ever. I note that NACAMAL is a traditional Vanuatu meeting place where communities come together. and it is so with great pleasure that we welcome Prime Minister Napat and members of your cabinet to Canberra, where this name of this city comes from the Ngunnawal word for meeting place. Ngunnawal began with a request from Vanuatu, and both countries have taken the time to ensure it delivers for both parties. Today's agreement confirms that Australia is Vanuatu's largest and most significant economic, security and development partner. Building on Vanuatu's strong participation in the PALM scheme, Ngunnawal will support skills development in Vanuatu by establishing a traineeship program with Australian recognised qualifications. Will also support Vanuatu's participation in the digital economy, all designed to focus on Vanuatu's development priorities. It recognises the existential threat posed by climate change in the Pacific and will support access to on-grid and off-grid energy for Vanuatu communities. Australia and Vanuatu share close cultural connections between our Melanesian, South Sea Islander and First Nations communities, and the Ngunnawal Agreement honours these ties and includes actions to strengthen them, especially for those affected by the historical practice of blackbirding. As is right for good friends, in the event of a natural disaster, Australia, through this treaty, commits to supporting Vanuatu with humanitarian assistance. Importantly, Mr Speaker, this is an agreement that respects the sovereignty of both Vanuatu and Australia. It recognises that Pacific security is a shared responsibility of Pacific Island Forum members. Ngunnawal formalises in a treaty Vanuatu's sovereign decision to not permit its territory to be used for any foreign military base or infrastructure, and that Vanuatu's critical infrastructure will remain free from militarisation and foreign interference. Speaker, there is no doubt that the safety and security of our region depends on the strength of our relationships. At its heart, Ngunnawal is about respect, trust and understanding. It strengthens and formalises our partnership as we walk forward together as two sovereign nations. To Prime Minister Napat and your ministers, and through them to the people of Vanuatu, I say thank you to us. Australia more Vanuatu, Oli, Bumbai, friends forever. Australia and Vanuatu will forever be friends.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The Treasurer has promised to fix Labor's new tax on widows, divorcees and victims of family and domestic violence, but he can't say how and he can't say when. When will the Prime Minister step in and clean up the Treasurer's mess?
Order. The member for Adelaide will leave the chamber under 94A. It's the same rules to everyone. The Leader of the Opposition is entitled to be heard in silence. He won't be interrupted. Prime Minister has the call.
Well, it's pretty bold of the Leader of the Opposition to speak about cleaning up messes when his shadow ministers are out there saying that the Liberal Party should be dissolved and start again, which is practically what they're saying. When it comes to taxes, when his deputy leader is out there doing interviews speaking about egregious tax cuts, is what Senator Hume, the deputy leader of the opposition, she's not the leader in the Senate, she's the deputy leader of the Liberal Party, but someone else's leader in the Senate, someone else's deputy leader in the Senate.
Order.
It's just a schmozzle, Mr Speaker. It's a schmozzle, Mr Speaker.
The member for Lyne, the Leader of the Opposition, on his point of order.
Relevance, Mr Speaker. There's widows, divorcees and victims of family and domestic violence who want to know an answer to this question.
Prime Minister.
I gave an answer to the first question, Mr Speaker, which is that none of those people will be impacted.
Member for Casey.
None of them. And what we see from the Leader of the Opposition in the House of Representatives is that they are such a mess. and they talk about cleaning up, whereas the Liberal Party can't decide whether they are in favour of tax cuts or against them, because they voted against the tax cuts in the parliament last week. They then said they were for them, and then this morning they've said they're egregious. I suggest that the Leader of the Opposition get his own act together, and we see from the glum faces behind. And the worse he goes, the more he chirps, Mr Speaker. The worse he goes, the more he chirps. I've made it very clear that no one will be negatively impacted. The people who they speak about in this very clearly will make that very clear. The fact is they don't even know if their party should be continued in the next week.
Call to order. The Minister for Northern Australia. Give the call to the honourable member for Banks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Australia's world-leading social media ban, protecting children from online harm and ensuring social media companies act on their social responsibility?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Banks for his question, and indeed he, like I think all members of this House, agree that social media companies have a social responsibility, a responsibility to back parents and protect young people from harm. And that's why we legislated our world-leading social media ban for under-16s. And I pay tribute to the former Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, for the support that was given across the board for this change, as well as to the crossbenchers. This is world-leading legislation. It has led to 20 countries following Australia's lead and implementing legislation right across the board. This is about children having a childhood that isn't spent glued to a device with all the danger that that can represent. And this is change that's been supported by members of this parliament but not led by it. It's been led initially by brave parents who'd taken what was personal tragedies of losing a son or a daughter and channelled that energy with courage and with vigilance into making sure the other parents didn't have to go through what they had gone through. Today we're joined in the gallery by Wayne and Mia. Wayne and Mia, parents who've seen firsthand the impact, and I pay tribute to Wayne and Mia, who are with us here today. They are part of, as well, organisations like Let Them Be Kids and 36 Months that have done an enormous difference. They know the difference that this can make. Social media companies are not doing enough to comply with the law, and that's why this afternoon the Minister will introduce new legislation that doubles down on our reforms and strengthens our action. We'll give the eSafety Commissioner expanded powers of enforcement to make sure that social media companies are complying with the ban. And we'll double the fines for social media companies that aren't doing enough to keep children off their platforms. This is about doing the right thing for parents and for Australian children. And it will give the eSafety Commissioner more power to be successful in legal actions which need to be taken if these companies simply won't comply. It's about strengthening a reform that's important not only for young people today, but for the well-being of future generations. We will have to, as technology changes, continue to respond as a parliament, as will parliaments right around the world, in order to make sure that we hold these companies to account, because they simply shouldn't be able to get away with making these massive profits with consequences for our youngest and most vulnerable people in society. Before
I call the next question, I'll just do some acknowledgements. I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today are winners of the 2026 House of Representatives Yarning Competition, which is an exciting opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander high school students across Australia to share their unique stories and experiences through creative mediums such as visual art, written words, photography, video or audio. Today, we had the pleasure of meeting this year's winners and congratulating them. Jade Sutton, the Year 7-8 winner from the electorate of Hinkler, Charlotte Liplin, the Year 9 winner from the electorate of Cunningham, and Lila Jenkins, the Year 11-12 winner from New England. Congratulations to you all and welcome to Question Time. I'm also pleased to inform the House that present at the gallery today is the Honourable Lance McCallum, State Member for Bundamba in the Queensland Parliament. And also we're welcoming an old friend of the Parliament, the member for Leichhardt, the former member for Leichhardt, the Honourable Warren Ench, joining us today. And the mayors from the Western Downs Regional Council, Councillor Andrew Smith, and the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kylie Bourne, as guests of the member for Maranoa. Welcome to Parliament. Give the call to the Honourable Member for Kennedy.
To the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment, Minister, the EPBC Act effectively dispossesses the people who have lived and loved their land for generations, some 40,000 years. Is your government to continue lauding itself about prioritising the double-degreed ideological know-alls, save the planet agenda, or are they going to give precedent for the people who created the ALP, the people who did hard yakka for a big quid?
Good call to the Leader of the House representing the Minister for the Environment, the Minister for Water.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Thanks to the member for Kennedy for the question. With respect to the EPBC Act, I'll say two things relevant to the question. The first is in terms of approval times. The approval times that we're dealing with under the new legislation are significantly improved, and meeting timelines has been a very significant shift since this government came to power. The second thing that I would point to is the legislation itself does and has always dealt with heritage listings, both national heritage listings and world heritage listings, where it's not often appreciated, do not simply deal with natural values, they deal with cultural values as well. And a large number of listings, quite specifically, include cultural values, and it has been the legal way to make sure that the principles that he has referred to in the question find their way into Australian law.
Give a call to the Honourable Member for Macarthur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Australia's world-leading social media laws to hold big tech to account?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Macarthur for his question and for his lifelong and sincere commitment to the health and well-being of Australian children, both in this place and outside this place. It's been just over 6 months since Australia's world-leading law creating a minimum age for social media began. So far, more than 5 million underage accounts have been deactivated or removed. According to a recent YouGov survey, 30% of young Australians aged between 13 to 15 are spending more time playing sport. 27% report better sleep. Online bullying is down 9%, and exposure to inappropriate and violent content has fallen by 18%. Australia has started to create cultural change that we can all be proud of. Despite our immense progress, I am not satisfied that tech companies are doing everything they can to keep under-16s off their platforms. The eSafety Commissioner is actively investigating non-compliance by 5 major platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok and YouTube. The Commissioner has found these companies are adopting a range of dirty tricks to undermine Australia's law that is straight out of the big tech playbook. It is clear, and not just to the government, but to parents, kids and teachers around the country, that social media companies are deliberately failing to comply with the law. It is clear to Mia Bannister and to Wayne Holsworth, who are in the chamber with us today, and they know all too well the harm that social media can have on young people. As Emma Mason said, we need to show the social media giants that we are serious about their compliance with Australian law and their access to our children under 16. Today, Australia is sending a message to these companies. If you want to do business in Australia, you will obey Australian laws, and if you don't, you will face the consequences. Today, the Albanese government will introduce a bill that gives eSafety more tools in their belt to take on these billion-dollar social media companies. We are doubling the maximum penalty from $49.5 million to $99 million. And we will strengthen the eSafety's information-gathering powers so they can get the evidence they need to hold these companies to account. I call on all members of parliament to come together to support the urgent passage of this bill so that eSafety can hold social media platforms to account as soon as possible. Delaying or blocking passage means delaying or blocking accountability. Let's come together. Let's get this bill passed for Mia, Emma and Wayne and the millions of parents who are relying on us. I will finish with a quote from Wayne, whose son died by suicide after he was sexually extorted online. This isn't a political football. This is about saving lives.
Give the call to the honourable member for Moncrieff.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. As a result of Labor's betrayal of trust on housing taxes, auction clearance rates are plummeting across the country. With demand collapsing in the housing market, is this Labor policy working as it was designed?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I appreciate that question from the member opposite. She asked about the legislation that passed the parliament on Thursday, Speaker, legislation that delivered every single one of Australia's 13 million workers with a tax cut, and legislation, Speaker, that for the first time puts first-home buyers in our country on a level playing field with investors. Now, Speaker, why has the government taken this action? Because we see the pain that the housing crisis is causing Australians. And instead of ignoring their problems like those opposite chose to do in the 9 years that they were in government, we are delivering real change for Australians, Speaker. Now, Speaker, with regard to the impact on house prices, I think the parliament is very well versed on this one. In the medium term, the advice from Treasury is that house prices in Australia will continue to rise, but a little bit more slowly than they otherwise would have. There's a lot that goes on into house prices, Speaker, and interest rates being the dominant factor. Speaker, I hope and I expect that those opposite understand that the Treasury modelling showed a slightly slower growth rate of about 2 percentage points slower than otherwise would have been the case, Speaker. Now, what do we get for that, Speaker? We get something incredibly special, and that is 75,000 Australians who go from renting into home ownership. And, Speaker, once again, I'm hearing the guffaws and I'm hearing the rabble opposite me try to piece together something useful and intelligent to say about housing policy that no doubt they will fail to do again. Now, Speaker, we had one of the front benchers give a notable interview today saying that her party needs a rebrand. And let me be really clear, Speaker. I think she's making some good points, Dan.
Order. The Minister can just cease making her points for a moment so I can hear from the manager.
Speaker, and I wouldn't be worried about good points when you've got a housing
Resume
market.
your seat. Yeah. I'm not going to slide into bad habits with just comments. You make the point on relevance. The Leader of the Opposition and the manager have done so, but you're not going to take advantage of the standing orders. So we'll just rein that in a little bit. The Minister wasn't asked about alternative policies. She was asked about the policy she's responsible for. She can do some compare and contrast, but she just can't start randomly talking about the opposition because she wasn't asked about the opposition and their name or anything to do with that. She was asked about responsibility she's for. So the manager is correct. I'm upholding his point of order, and I just want to make sure you return back to the question.
Absolutely, Speaker. Very happy to do so. And I'm simply making the point, Speaker, that we've got front benchers openly saying that they need to rethink the existence of their political party. On this side of the parliament, we're living a very different experience, Speaker. We don't need any experts to tell us what the great Australian Labor Party stands for, Speaker. We stand for equality, we stand for aspiration, and we stand for first home buyers of our country getting the fair go that they deserve.
Give the call to the honourable member for Swan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping with cost of living and helping Australians get ahead? And how does that compare to other approaches?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Speaker. The member for Swan's a really valued member of our team, and I thank her for her question. This government and this Prime Minister is delivering cost of living help, and we are delivering real change at the same time. You can see that in our tax reforms. You can see that in the cost of living help, which kicks in from this Wednesday, the 1st of July. Our tax reforms are all about cutting taxes for workers, helping first home buyers and making the tax system fairer. Our help with the cost of living has been a priority for this government every one of our almost 1,500 days in office, but this Wednesday is an especially important day, Mr Speaker. And that's because from this Wednesday, every worker gets another tax cut. Workers on the national minimum wage get a 6% pay rise. Workers on modern award wages get a 4.75% pay rise. Workers will start getting their super paid with their wages. Motorists will get another month of fuel excise relief. Parents will be entitled to 26 weeks of paid parental leave, up from 24. A number of payments will be indexed, and our ban on excessive pricing of groceries comes into effect. Now, Mr Speaker, through our tax cuts, our tax reforms and our cost of living relief, we are supporting workers and first home buyers, we're supporting parents and motorists at the same time. And the tax cuts which kick in on Wednesday are happening despite those opposite, not because of them. If they had their way, there'd be no tax cuts, no cost of living relief, no reforms to the broken housing market, which has locked too many young people out for too long. Now, Mr Speaker, the three right-wing parties, they all seek to capitalise on the real pressures that people are facing at the same time as their anti-worker, anti-housing agenda would make things worse. Now, Senator Hume was at it again this morning on multiple occasions describing our tax cuts as egregious, Mr Speaker. First they opposed them, then they voted against them, then they said they'd repeal them, and now they think tax cuts for workers are egregious, Mr Speaker. Now, whether it's Senator Hume or the member for Hume, they are doing to the Liberal Party this term what they did to their economic credibility last term, Mr Speaker. On his watch, the Liberal Party is circling the drain, Mr Speaker, and for good reason. They oppose tax cuts. This government is delivering cost of living help. We are delivering real change, and the extra cost of living assistance that kicks in from this Wednesday is a really important demonstration of that.
Call to the honourable member for Flinders.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Housing. Last week, the minister admitted the value of an Australian home could collapse by up to 20% because of Labor's toxic taxes on housing. Does the minister know how many first home buyers now owe more money than their home is actually worth?
Give the call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Speaker, the premise of the question is factually and utterly incorrect.
Order. Give the call. Order. Order. Get order. Members on my left will cease interjecting. Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese government delivering a better deal for working Australians?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Melbourne for her question, but also for her absolute day-to-day commitment to see working Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn. It's this Labor government that is committed to deliver real change for working Australians. And this includes our commitment to get wages moving for working Australians. And one of the ways we're achieving this is advocating year on year for wage increases for minimum award wages. And I'm really pleased to inform the House that from this Wednesday, award wage workers will see a 4.75% increase. and the minimum wage workers will receive a 6% wage increase. This means for the first time the average weekly national minimum wage is more than $1,000 a week. These pay increases represent a real wage rise for nearly 3 million Australian workers. And it means that from Wednesday, award-reliant workers like Monica, a community support worker from Victoria, will receive more cost-of-living help. Monica says that this pay rise is incredibly important because her industry is low-paid and made largely of women workers who, as she describes it, work hard, slog hard and attend shifts because we are committed to our work. And of course this increase will also help workers like Noah. Noah is a school cleaner who has welcomed the pay rise, saying that this is a great thing and that he now, and I quote, is able to save for a car I need to get further. Now, our government believes workers like Monica and Noah deserve a pay rise, and we are backing them to get one. Not only will workers receive a pay rise from Wednesday, but of course 14 million Australians will get another tax cut from this government, a tax cut of up to $268. Of course, workers will also benefit from this Labor government's payday super laws coming into effect also on Wednesday. Of course, these laws build on our existing reforms which have made superannuation a workplace right in the Fair Work Act and, of course, the increase to compulsory contributions. Our payday super changes will ensure that super is paid earlier and more regularly into super accounts, giving people more oversight and a bigger balance at retirement. Whether it is getting wages moving again, whether it's more super into workers' accounts or whether it's tax cuts, it is only the Albanese Labor government that is delivering real change for Australian workers.
Call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. Last week the Minister said we see periods of significant house price growth and then we see the market make a correction, and that's what we are seeing at the moment. Does the Minister know how many first-home buyers now owe more money than their home is worth?
Give a call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Speaker, again, I'm asked about the legislation that passed the parliament on Thursday. And, Speaker, that legislation was about three really simple things. It was about giving every single worker in our country a tax cut. It was about levelling the playing field so first-home buyers have the opportunity that they deserve. And it was about building a fairer tax system for the country. Now, Speaker, I've spoken to the parliament before about the Treasury modelling that supported these changes.
The Chief Government Whip will cease interjecting. The Minister will pause. The Manager on a point of order. Get to the point of order.
Goes to relevance, Speaker, and this question was very specific. There was a quote from the Minister and then the question was asking about first-home buyers and negative equity, and I would ask the Minister to directly answer the question as she should.
The member for Macarthur will leave the chamber under 94A. Sure, what's going up the back there today with everyone just... You won't get away with anything in this chamber, no matter where you're sitting. Order. The Minister was asked about her quote and about the policy. You asked to be answering the question directly. I can make her be directly relevant. So make sure with the Minister, I'm just giving her some guidance here, to make sure she's not talking about the opposition policy, she's talking about her policy, which she was doing regarding the legislation and the modelling. So, well, that's where she's at too with her answer. So you've interrupted perhaps at the wrong time, but she's being directly relevant at this time.
Interrupted at the wrong time, Speaker, because I was being directly relevant to the question. I'm talking about the Treasury modelling that supported the tax changes in the budget that show that over time house prices in Australia will continue to increase just a little bit more slowly than they otherwise would have, Speaker. We're talking about 2 percentage points difference. Now, Speaker, Those opposite, I can see, place no particular weight on the changes that our government is making to address a broken housing market for our country. In fact, day after day, you've already taken your point of order. You shouldn't have wasted it earlier. Speaker?
Order. The minister doesn't need to give commentary about what's happening in the chamber. I can take care of that. It's fine. Order.
The minister is defying your ruling. There is no way that the opposition is in any way relevant to this question about negative equity.
Order. Look, if the minister can conclude her answer, it's probably going to assist the House or be directly relevant. I don't want to sit her down, but if she has got nothing else to say, she should think about winding up her answer. Otherwise, we can't be here all day taking these points of order from the opposition, and we'll move to the next question.
I understand completely, Speaker. Speaker, the tax changes that I was asked about are going to help 75,000 rental households into first home ownership. Those opposite may place no particular weight on that, Speaker, but we are proud of that change, and it's an important one for our country.
Order. Give the call to the honourable member for Newcastle.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on our commitment to strengthen paid parental leave? And why is this so important? And what are the risks to this?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thanks so much, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Newcastle for her question. She has a lifetime of standing up for Australia's working women and for Australia's working families. In just 2 sleeps, the Albanese Labor government's next major expansion of paid parental leave will take effect. We know that families need flexibility. They shouldn't have to choose between having a baby and having a career. That's why Labor started paid parental leave, and that's why Labor is expanding it. From the 1st of July this week, on Wednesday this week, families will get more time, the full 6 months of paid parental leave. They'll get more money, over $1,000 a week. In fact, we've more than doubled paid parental leave since coming back to government. It's about $30,000 now, and of course more people will be eligible. Those changes have been so important for Australia's working families, but those opposite have been absolutely all over the shop on this. From the bad old days when the former Treasurer, Joe Hockey, said that mums were double dippers, he said that on Mother's Day.
Order.
Former Prime Minister Scott Morrison called them rorters. The member for Goldstein has said it's not my choice that women have children, it's genetic. Where's he gone? Where's he gone? Oh. The member for Goldstein should know he's got 1,400 parents who've benefited just last year from paid parental leave in his electorate. And now we've got Senator Hanson and One Nation wanting to strip away workers' rights, and again all over the place on whether they support paid parental leave from 2017 onwards, saying things like women only get themselves pregnant for the money. And you would think, say, Senator Hanson, 50,000 parents in Queensland benefited last year from paid parental leave. The member for New England, well, he's not here either. 1,500 parents in his electorate. The new member for Farrer, 1,700 parents in his electorate got paid parental leave last year. Does One Nation support paid parental leave? Australian families have made it absolutely clear that they support it and they need it and they want it, and if the 3 coalition parties over there don't support it, they should be frank about that.
The call to the member for Curtin.
My question's for the Minister for Communications. I commend the government for committing to a digital duty of care. 15 years ago, we had no idea about the harms that social media would do, from radicalisation to exacerbating eating disorders. With AI, there are early signs of new types of harm, like attachment hacking and cognitive decline. Will you commit to a digital duty of care that includes an overarching duty, so it's future-proof for emerging harms, rather than limiting accountability to the harms we can identify now?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
Thank you very much to the member for Curtin for her question and for her continuing to work with me and like-minded parliamentary colleagues on such an important space. I truly believe we're at the coalface of one of the most compelling policy questions of our time, and this is what that looks like. Thoughtful questions, thoughtful answers. The digital duty of care, in its intent, is meant to do two things. One, to prevent or to make big tech prevent harm to their users and to prevent psychosocial harm to their users. So I believe that defining it as psychosocial harm captures what you're talking about by way of emerging harms as we get more research that comes into the field. The second element of the digital duty of care is safety by design. So that is switching the onus from, at the moment, them being able to do basically whatever they like in an unregulated space, the harm occurring, and then avenues to people who have been harmed through things like e-safety, to big tech needing to do safety by design. And I think I'll call here something that Wayne Holsworth said in our meeting and then the press conference with the Prime Minister earlier today about the social media laws, which is the first tranche ahead of what's coming with digital duty of care. He said that when seatbelts became mandatory, it's something I say all the time, people did not immediately comply with them. It took a while for that cultural change to seep through to now where you're at a point where if you don't have your seatbelt on in the car, your kid will tell you the cops are going to stop you. You haven't got your seatbelt on. Those seatbelts, when they first came into place in Australia, were pretty they weren't retractable. You know, they were a much earlier form of the kind of seatbelts that we see now. In fact, now we have different car manufacturing companies compete to be the safest car on the roads. Volvo's 5-point safety harness for your children. I truly believe that what we're doing here is moving from that early model non-retractable seatbelt to a point where online tech competes to be the safest company in the space. That means we have to hold them to account. That means we have to continue to work together in a bipartisan measure. So, in short, I think we do address that, but I look forward to continuing to work with you on digital duty of care in the second half of this year.
Call to the honourable member for Aston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Financial Services. What steps are being taken by the Albanese Labor government to deliver real change and protect Australians from price gouging at the supermarket checkout? And what opposition has there been? Great question.
Call to the Assistant Treasurer and the Minister for Financial Services.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the member for Aston for her question, and I acknowledge that she has, throughout her time in this place, been such a strong advocate for measures that will help Australians with cost-of-living measures. We know that too many Australians feel like the economy hasn't been working for them and that pressure has been building for a long time. Australians only have to look at their supermarket receipts to know just how tough things have been. And they've been getting tough for so many people. That's why we're delivering real reform that will make a difference at the supermarket checkout. And can I acknowledge the hard work of the Assistant Minister for Productivity and Competition, who has been responsible for leading so many of the measures that I'm going to outline in this answer. From 1 July 2026, it will be illegal for very large supermarkets such as Coles and Woolworths to charge prices that are excessive when compared to the cost of supply plus a reasonable margin. Our new laws are intended to ensure that prices more closely reflect what would occur in a competitive market, protecting Australian consumers. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission will enforce these laws. Any retailers found to be in breach will face a fine the greater of $10 million, 3 times the value of the benefit derived, or 10% of annual turnover during the preceding 12 months. Speaker, these are new regulatory powers with real teeth. These are tough laws which are in the best interests of consumers and the best interests of the broader community. These are part of the Albanese government's broader agenda to boost competition and protect Australian consumers at the checkout, including strengthening the unit pricing code, including measures to tackle shrinkflation, implementing the ACCC's recommendations to improve transparency in relation to prices, price trends, promotions and loyalty programs in the sector, providing the ACCC with over $30 million to address harmful or misleading conduct in the supermarket and retail sectors, launching the Supporting Fresh Produce Suppliers Food and Grocery Code Education Program, which provides $2 million in grants to help fresh produce suppliers gain the skills they need to stand up to the big supermarkets, and making the Food and Grocery Code mandatory with multi-million-dollar penalties for serious breaches, something which hadn't happened under a decade of those opposite. It's something those opposite actually opposed. The opposition on these issues and so many other issues is the party of the status quo, the party standing in the way of good reform, as we saw yet again last week. This government is delivering reforms that will result in concrete improvements in people's everyday lives. We're delivering real change and protecting Australians from price gouging at the supermarket checkout.
Call to the honourable member for Mallee.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. Does the minister know how many first home buyers now owe more money than their home is worth?
Give a call to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Speaker, this is a variation on a question that I've now been asked multiple times, and I'm not changing my answer. Speaker, the question is about house prices and the effect of the government's legislation that passed the parliament on Thursday, a piece of legislation where our side of the chamber was proud to stand up for first home buyers in our country, Speaker. And it's not the only way that we're doing it, Speaker. Of course, this is part of a massive housing agenda that our government is implementing to try to fix a broken system, Speaker. And let me be really clear about this. We've got yet another question time where those opposite come into question time again and again, uselessly defending a status quo that every other person in our country can see is broken. And I say to those opposite, Speaker, as I said to them last week, we have got a home ownership rate in this country falling through the floor.
Minister will pause. Member for McNamara and the member for Spence. It's the member for Spence. I apologise, member for McNamara. Is now warned. The member for Mallee.
On relevance, the question was extremely tight. How many first home buyers now owe more money than their home is worth?
Order. The Leader of the House.
To the point of order, Mr Speaker, it has always been the case in a question like that that if you are relevant to the topic area, which is the situation of first home buyers, it's in order.
Yeah, and I can appreciate the member for Mallee and other members may wish want a number or figure, and we've had this many times before. The member for Dawson and the Minister for Social Services, I can't compel the minister to give an ad. You're just going to have to resume your seat for a moment. Yeah, just while we deal with the point of order. Okay, well, I'm in mid-sentence, so listen and then go after that, no problem. But I can't detain the House too much longer because I can't compel the minister to give a fact or figure. I can compel her to be directly relevant about the policy topic she was asked, but I'll hear from the manager on a further point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. And it's just a point that you've made previously, which I think is a very good one. The minister was asked a specific question. She's not entitled to then start talking about broad portfolio issues. She will need to keep her answer efficient to the question. That's you, Speaker, on the 27th of March 2024. Very wise words. Very wise words.
And as she was, and once again, maybe a mistiming, she was on her feet talking about the policy, so she wasn't being wide-ranging. So yes, while those words are absolutely correct and very wise, in this case it doesn't apply because she's talking about, it was a good try. We'll continue on to make sure the minister just is not talking about the opposition, but a narrow area of policy that she was asked about.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I'm talking, Speaker, to the parliament about the essential topic of first home buyers and home ownership rates in this country. And, Speaker, I just want to remind the parliament and those in the public gallery who are with us today, we have got home ownership rates in our country falling through the floor. a low-income young couple in our country is half as likely to own their own home than they were in the year that I was born. And I would really like to understand how home ownership rates have to fall in this country for those opposite to see that we have a broken housing system in Australia. What has happened to housing in the last roughly 40 years in our country has radically changed what it means to be aspirational in Australia today. Speaker, we've got poll after poll telling us that the majority of Australia's young people believe they will never be able to own a home, their own home in our country. This used to be, Speaker, the party of home ownership. Now they're talking about having to get experts in to tell them what they believe in. Now, Speaker, I just finished by...
Order. Resume your seat. Yeah, we're just going to get the minister to wrap up her answer. She says she's concluding. If she strays into opposition policy, I'll set her down immediately.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I appreciate that. I'm making the point to the parliament that someone here has to stand up for first home buyers, and that's exactly what Labor did on Thursday.
Give a call to the honourable member for McNamara.
Thank you very much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making medicines cheaper for all Australians, and how are new medicines being listed on the PBS changing lives?
Call to the Minister for Health, the Minister for Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and to the member for McNamara for his question, but also for being such a huge supporter of our policies to make medicines cheaper and cheaper. And like everyone on this side, Mr Speaker, the member is so fiercely proud of that great Labor legacy, the PBS, which for 80 years has given Australians access to the world's best medicines at affordable prices. And that mission of Ben Chifley's remains as fresh today as it was 80 years ago, Mr Speaker. Now, not every brand launched in the 1940s is able to keep its freshness, Mr Speaker. Some start to seem a little bit stale, and even sometimes their greatest supporters suggest there's the need for a wholesale rebranding exercise for some of those brands, Mr Speaker. But I can assure the House we won't be rebranding the PBS because it continues to deliver for Australians month in, month out, unlike some of those other brands launched in the 1940s. And, Mr Speaker, since we came to government 5 years ago, or almost 5 years ago, we have launched more than 460 new medicines on the PBS. And this Wednesday, on the 1st of July, we'll list another 10, Mr Speaker, in a blockbuster month, listing new life-changing medicines for a whole range of conditions, including lung cancer, breast cancer, bile duct cancer, lymphoma, growth hormone deficiency, anaphylaxis, a whole bunch of others, type 1 diabetes, and importantly, Mr Speaker, as well, severe asthma. Now, asthma impacts about 1 in 10 Australians, Mr Speaker, and 1 in 10 of those, as many as 1 in 10 of those, have a severe form of the condition. Around 100 people every day on average are hospitalised because of asthma, and while deaths have halved since the late 1980s, we still have about 500 Australians losing their lives to the condition every single year, one of the highest death rates in the world, Mr Speaker. But the PBS listing on Wednesday of Telspi is going to make a huge difference to all of that, a huge difference to patients like 22-year-old Chloe Thompson, for whom every breath is a battle, Mr Speaker. She says living with severe asthma means waking up multiple times in the night struggling to breathe, and she's one of many thousands whose asthma simply can't be controlled by inhalers alone. Their lungs constantly inflamed, putting them at risk of repeated attacks. But from Wednesday, these patients will have access to potentially life-saving relief with this treatment Telspi, a breakthrough injection that is administered once every 4 weeks. And without the PBS listing, they'd be paying as much as $1,600 every time they had an injection. Now they'll just pay PBS prices, delivering real change to Chloe's life and building a healthier Australia, Mr Speaker.
Call to the honourable member for Farrer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water. As the local member representing the vast majority of the southern Murray-Darling Basin, I ask that this government request the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder to urgently assess if the current environmental 2026 objectives through the additional water buybacks has been met, and, if so, I further ask that all surplus water be immediately returned to the temporary market to allow farmers to finish and plant the nation's food crops this 2026 spring.
Give the call to the Leader of the House and the Minister representing the Minister for Water.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. A couple of things with respect to the interests of the agricultural interests in the electorate of Farrer. First of all, the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder provides an annual report in terms of the objectives being met, and added to that we have the review of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan happening at the moment. The concept of surplus water not being used to keep the basin healthy is not something that the government does. The water that is there is to make sure that we still have a living river system, because there are no jobs on a dead river. There are no jobs on a dead river. And that's the reason, the whole reason we had to have water reform, which was started with the Water Act under the Howard government, I might remind people. The whole reason we had to have that reform was because when the rivers were dying, the jobs and the towns were going too. And so you need to have a system to make sure that, with systems that have been very much allocated and allocated and allocated, to the extent that the rivers were living as though they were in drought before the drought came, which meant that then when drought hit, it was harder and more difficult than ever. That's the reason we had to have water reform. That's the reason we had to have a Murray-Darling Basin Plan. That's the reason we have a Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder. And when drought comes, the Commonwealth's water holdings, which are the same range of water holdings as irrigators have, as allocations go down for the irrigators, they go down for the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder as well. The allocations, because we've got the water holder owns water of a full class, the full range of classes of different water licences, are part of the Commonwealth holdings, just as they are the holdings that irrigators rely on. But you do not want to go back, no one should want to go back to what the system was like before we had this water reform, before the government had the chance with the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder to make sure that there was an irrigator there who was making sure the system itself stayed healthy. Because if it doesn't happen, you then get an increase on the blackwater events, on all the different events that make the water unusable as well for the irrigators at the same time that it's killing the ecosystem and the natural environment. That's why we had to have water reform.
Call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
My question is to the Minister for Multiculturalism. What is the Albanese Labor government going to do to ensure that every Australian, no matter where they come from, has the opportunity to succeed? What could put this approach at risk?
Good. Call to the Minister for International Development, the Minister for Small Business and the Minister for Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I do want to thank the member for Leichhardt for his question. But if I may, I'd also like to recognise the member for Leichhardt for the way in which he stands up for all Australians, as do all members of this government every time they come in here and vote for fairness and a better way for all Australians. Mr Speaker, aspiration is at the heart of the Australian story, the aspiration to build a better future for themselves and for their children. And our government believes that whether you were born here or whether you came here, no matter what language you speak at home, what faith you practice or where you live, every single Australian deserves the opportunity to participate, to contribute and to succeed. Because when we say that Australia is one of the most successful multicultural nations in the world, that is what we mean. Equality of opportunity to realise aspirations and a shared sense of identity and a sense of belonging. And that's why we're delivering real change for all Australians, Mr Speaker. Paid parental leave, tax cuts for all workers, not just some, but every single worker, raising the minimum wage for low-wage workers, a fairer education system where every child gets the opportunity to realise their potential, strengthening Medicare, cheaper medicines, urgent care clinics right across the nation. We know that a strong sense of belonging is critical to people being able to participate and contribute, that aspiration can only flourish when people have that sense of belonging. Now, the three right-wing parties would have you believe that Australia is weakened by our diversity, a diversity that is etched in our landscape and in our history, diversity of our First Nations peoples and those who came across the seas, from the Cameleers to the convicts and settlers, the post-war migrants and refugees, and the generations of migrants since. Small business owners, skilled workers, families, communities, nation builders. Diversity that is quite simply who we are. And yet the Leader of the Opposition cannot even bring himself to defend our diversity or our multiculturalism. And that should tell us everything about the Leader of the Opposition and the three right-wing parties, because even as they fight among themselves about who they are or what they stand for, one thing is clear, Mr Speaker. They believe in aspiration for some, but we believe in aspiration for all Australians.
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I ask further questions. You can post the notice paper.